Welcome back to the Joust About Careers podcast. I'm your host, Brian Bratt, and this week's guest is 2018 Van Buren graduate Lydia Reineke, who is a clinical fellow speech-language pathologist. In this episode, Lydia shares how she is in the career field she chose to pursue during her junior year of high school, why she decided to double major in speech and hearing science and Spanish, and how she's using both of those majors today, why she decided to earn her master's degree at Arizona State University, and much more. Whether you are interested in a career as a speech-language pathologist or are still exploring your options, I hope that what Lydia shares today will help all of you make better career decisions and have fulfilling career journeys. Enjoy the show. Lydia, thank you very much for joining us for this episode of Joust About Careers. And to start, I'd like to know, how does a typical day look for you as a licensed speech pathologist who is also a clinical fellow?
So, just to clarify, a clinical fellow is kind of like a speech therapy residency. So we have a 2 years master's degree after our bachelor's, and then we have it's a 9-month period roughly, where we have to find a supervisor. They are kind of signing off on a couple hours for us. And then after that 9 months, we get our C's, Certification of Clinical Competency. And we're technically out on our own, whatnot. I mean, more or less my day is the same as someone with their C's, but there's just a couple stipulations.
Okay.
So my day, in the setting that I'm at right now, which is a skilled nursing facility. So that's inpatient. I work with people who are like living in the building that I work at. I show up, I go to my office, I chart review for probably like 30 minutes. So that's kind of looking who's on my schedule for the day, who I see for a treatment, who I'm seeing to evaluate. I'll do like a background, a check of their medical history, chart review for my evaluation, put a little bit of information for that. And then I go see my first patient either for breakfast, see them with a meal, because I try to schedule my day around meals. And if not, then I might go to see my evaluation, do the evaluation, and then run through my patient list of depending on what's on my schedule, it can be up to 13 people in an 8-hour day. So,
wow, that's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people. Yeah, they keep you booked.
So if you think about the meals, what's the relevance there when it comes to speech pathology?
Mm-hmm. So, most people, when I tell them what I do, think that I'm working in a school, I'm working with kids with, trouble saying their R's or their S's, which is definitely something we do. But in my setting, I don't really do any of that. A big thing in a skilled nursing facility is that when people have, life-altering events, or they get older and they're, have dementia or whatever kind of cognitive impairment, their swallowing is affected. So we work with, it's called dysphagia, is the technical term for a swallowing disorder. And so I might, want to see my patient with a meal because we are trialing a different texture to see if they can tolerate it, because, everyone probably, or majority of people, are going to be safe on a pudding texture all day, every day, but that's not something that most people enjoy. And so we want to get them to their least restrictive diet, make sure they're as safe as they possibly can be. They're able to tolerate a full meal. They're able to get in as much nutrients as they need, but that they, aren't just on puree. They're happy with where they're at. So that's a very simplified version of it. But eating and drinking is a huge part of speech therapy that people don't really realize.
Right. Well, I think swallowing, that's something we take for granted. A million times a day. In addition to when I'm eating, and just that idea of when there are those issues, someone needs to be there to help them and provide that assistance to make sure that they are living the best life they can and so forth. So that's really interesting. Yeah. So when you
Yeah.
were in high school, did you anticipate going into this career field, or what were you thinking when you were a senior and graduating and heading off to Ohio State?
Yeah. I think that I wanted to do this actually from my junior year.
Okay.
I had shadowed, I thought I wanted to do some kind of like rehab, physical therapy, occupational therapy. And then I had shadowed a physical therapist, occupational therapist, and a speech therapist all in the same day at like an outpatient facility in Findlay. And kind of got to the end of the day and was like, I don't even like the other two. I like speech. Like I didn't, it wasn't even on my radar. And so then after that, I kind of just went down that path and applied to Ohio State the next year and decided, okay, I'm going to go here and they have a good program for it. And let's see where this takes me.
Right. Well, and that idea of getting the experience, again, I love you saying that speech therapy wasn't even on your radar until you went and saw that and then realized, wow, that's really interesting. So you went to Ohio
Yeah.
State and you earned a degree in speech language pathology, or I guess speech and hearing science. But then
hmm
you also studied Spanish there. Did you end up with a
hmm
major in Spanish, or was that a minor, or how did that
Yeah,
work?
I double majored, so
Double
Spanish and
majored.
speech and hearing science.
Okay, so
I came in
how?
with a minor.
Okay. So
hmm
the plan was to minor, but then it turned into a major.
Yes, exactly. Mrs. McIntosh, I don't know if she's still there,
Oh,
but
still here.
still there. Okay. So Mrs. McIntosh was my first real introduction to Spanish. I took 4 years of it, and I just went through high school liking it. Um, and so I was like, I have 4 years under my belt. It's not, you know, I still felt like I was a long way to go, but I knew if I stopped then, I would just lose it all. So
Right.
I was like, I'll minor. We'll see where this takes me. I get there, and then my freshman year, I think second semester, I had an amazing professor who was for my phonetics class, and she was a speech therapist, or she's going back to get her speech therapy degree. I can't honestly remember, but she was my TA, and she spoke Spanish, and she was like, if you want to do Spanish, like do all of it, do everything. So she got me connected to the head of the Spanish and Portuguese department at Ohio State and had a meeting with me, which looking back is kind of crazy, but he really wanted to encourage Spanish speech language pathologists, actually.
Right.
They were trying to make a program for that and make that something that Ohio State has to offer. And so they're like, if you're going to do Spanish, major in it, like go do what you got to do, study abroad. I mean, it was definitely a lot more commitment. There was a study abroad component, there was a ton more classes to take. But I was like, sure, why not? I mean, these people say I can do it. I'm going to do it. Like,
Right.
that's where life's taken me. And definitely got a little crazy there because my second year of college was COVID, like spring 2020. So that makes things a little more complicated with like the study abroad component and whatnot. But yeah, I got there and just thought, I want to keep going. I don't want to lose it. Why don't I just keep going?
Right. Now, did you end up then, were you still able to finish in 4 years, or did it take additional time?
So I did finish in 4 years. Technically, I graduated the summer of 2022. So I was supposed to graduate this spring, graduated this summer, but that was
Okay.
because my last semester of college, I went and I was in Spain for about, I think, like 5.5 months, studying abroad. It
That's
was the
awesome.
only time I was able to do it because of COVID and travel
Right.
restrictions and whatnot. And they told me your transcripts, everything are just going to be delayed. So I got back, I think I got back in very, very end of June 2022 and then graduated in August because it just took a little bit of time, which was the price I had to pay for, living in Spain for a little bit. And I was fine
Right.
with
Right. But yeah, so yeah, definitely got an amazing experience living in Spain, but
Yeah.
with a double major, I think that's very impressive that you finished that quickly. Now, you've had a variety of internships. So you've had four where your title was student speech language therapist, had a couple at Ohio State, um, one at, or I guess maybe one at Ohio State, one at Arizona State, one with a hospital out in Arizona, and then one at a dual language academy. So
hmm
you've seen, it sounds like, a wide variety of ages,
hmm
and you know being able to then go to that dual language academy. Can you talk a little bit about how you've used Spanish, and especially living in Arizona, obviously many more, likely more Spanish speakers there than in Northwest Ohio. I guess
Hmm.
how has that double major then and having that Spanish degree, how has that really helped you in your or as a speech language pathologist?
Yeah. Um, it's helped me a lot. Actually, the biggest setting it's helped me at is the hospital and the place I'm at right now, to be honest. The Dual Language Academy was awesome. It is such a cool setup, and I've never heard of anything like that in Ohio, so I don't know if there is or isn't, but um, they would do it was an elementary school. They do half their classes in English, half their classes in Spanish, and so their teachers were teaching all in Spanish half the day. They'd have separate teachers most likely. Um, and so that got kids amazing exposure to Spanish every day that, they normally wouldn't have, or they maybe had at home, but they didn't have like in the education setting. And
Right.
there's definitely is like a difference with that. As far as speech therapy, at that school, it was all in English. And actually, one thing I noticed, which surprised me, was even kids who spoke at home with their parents and that was their language, and they like to speak English at school,
Hmm.
even in a dual language academy. And like I had one kid who I spoke to in Spanish. He had a language delay, and we were trying to figure out, in order to get true language delay, it has to be both in English and Spanish. If not, it's probably just you might not have enough knowledge in one of the languages, and so he's, trying to fill in the gaps. Um, and I was trying to speak to him in Spanish to try to get him to just understand something, see if there's, you know, giving it to him in both of the languages might help. And he would not respond to me in Spanish. He would understand me, he would spit it out in Spanish, and I was like, I think he would know these words. And he'd be like, nope, nope, nope. So the kids are really interesting sometimes. Like they recognize English is a very dominant language here, even if in the school it's kind of 50-50.
Right.
In the hospital or an inpatient, it's definitely more, I'm seeing people who grew up in Mexico, came here well into their adulthood, and they don't know any English at all. And so I am not that I am forced, I'm glad to do it, but like I have to be the one to be out of my comfort zone and speak in my language that is not as, familiar to me and do the best that I can with that. So they definitely in adulthood just it is what it is, they're speaking Spanish, and then the
Right.
kids are a little bit so about it.
Now, are you the only speech language pathologist where you work who is bilingual, or are there multiple people like that?
Yeah, I'm the only one in my building. There's a couple physical therapists there that speak Spanish. And then like there's other staff, CNAs and a couple nurses that speak Spanish as well, but the vast majority is basically only English speaking, and it definitely is very helpful. I get filtered all the Spanish speakers to me. My supervisor will just give them on to me, and um, there's ways to get around it. There's like translation lines and stuff, but even I've used that with other people, and it's definitely not. It's just not as good as being able to
Right.
communicate one on one and not talk through someone. So it is a very helpful thing, I think, for just for my building that I know enough to communicate.
How did you decide to go to Arizona State for your master's degree? Was that, are there a lot of schools that would offer a degree like that, or is Arizona State one that's well known for that?
So there are a lot of schools that offer a speech therapy master's. Like Ohio State has one, Cincinnati, Toledo, Bowling Green, tons of schools
Okay.
in Ohio. And Ohio do have that. My biggest thing was when I, kind of sat down with the head of the Department of Spanish and Portuguese at Ohio State. He was telling me, there's these schools out of state that have what's called a multicultural certificate, more or less. And so you could get just good exposure, good clinical exposure, good in certain classwork that you can do to kind of like bump you up a little bit in that experience if you want to do like a bilingual, speech therapy. if you want to be a bilingual speech therapist, basically.
Okay.
And so at the time, I don't know. I know Ohio State was kind of working on that. I don't know if they have it now or not, but they were working on that. They didn't have it when I was graduating, but like Arizona State had it, University of Arizona, University of Texas at Austin, TCU. I think like Indiana University has a good program too, which is random. But I said if I'm going to go out of state, I'm going to go somewhere warm and I'm gonna go somewhere different than what looks like Ohio. I
Right,
was like, I'm
right.
not going to Indiana. So I applied to University of Texas at Austin, TCU, University of Arizona, and then Arizona State. Um, I don't know, just kind of picked those ones
Right,
and
right.
went from there.
It was the warmth.
It was a big deal, yeah.
Um, Now, going through my limited records of Van Buren graduates, we have like five
hmm
Van Buren graduates who are working as speech language pathologists, but
hmm
we have people at a variety of levels, ages, everything else. I guess
hmm
you said you really like, the age group you're working with now. I guess, do you like that flexibility that you could basically work with probably almost any age group you would want? You could work with the smallest of kids and the oldest of adults. I guess, what do you like about that flexibility?
Yeah, I do love that flexibility. Speech therapy is awesome because any given day you can completely change what your day wants to look like. I could work in the schools, I could work with little kids, I could work with high schoolers, I could work with middle schoolers, I could work in a private practice with adults, I could work in a private practice with kids, I could work in a private practice that specializes in like neuro or like neuroanesthesia, or I could work with fluency, stuttering. Yeah, there's a lot of great options. I could work in home health. There's a lot of great like flexible schedule options, which is great. Some more so than others. Like um, hospitals a little more, a little more by the book, I would say, and rigid with the protocols, which makes sense. You kind of have to be. But yeah, there's a lot of really great flexibility in speech therapy, which is definitely a draw to the field, I would say.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, flexibility is one of those big positives. I guess, what are some other things that you love about your career? And then maybe what are some of those
Mhm.
challenges of this career that people should be aware of before
Yeah.
they jump into this?
Yeah. Um, I I mean, the fact that I get to work with Spanish speakers, I mean, Spanish and English speakers is a big draw for me personally. Um, I've learned so much since even just starting my job post grad in May, as far as Spanish goes. I mean, speech therapy, as far as speech therapy goes as well, but
Right.
Spanish as well. Um, I feel like I wouldn't have had that opportunity to advance my Spanish as much. I also love the neuro side of everything. I think it's super interesting, like when someone has a stroke in one side of their brain and then the other side of their body is affected, and then, certain deficits that come out cognitively, like sometimes people like can't see the left side of their paper anymore, but like they know it's there. And I tell them it's there, then they can see it. Super, super interesting things that have to do with the brain. That's just cool to me. I think that I'm also drawn to, these are big moments in people's life if they have a stroke or, a car accident or, their grandparents going through dementia and progressing. And I think that being there for those moments for those people is just really, it's very intimate, it's very special, it's very um, challenging at times, but I love the challenge of being there and kind of showing that support and giving people a little bit of like hope and reassurance. And I think that you make such interesting relationships. You hear such interesting stories from your patients, and um, it's new every day. So that really draws me to that, specifically the setting I'm in. I would say a challenge about this field that I didn't expect is that, it's a lot of school, it's a lot of commitment to get into it, 6 years. And you're not working in between like some degrees. Some people go get a business degree and then they work for a few years and their work pays for their master's, and that does not happen. You're paying for it right off the bat. So I would just say, financially, make sure you're not getting yourself into too much debt, because it's not like we go off and we graduate and we make, $150,000
Right.
or 200. We're not a doctor, and doctors are getting into hundreds of thousands of debt. But like for us to do that, you just shouldn't do it. So if
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
takes that, I would say go a different path. Try and get out. I wouldn't recommend getting into a ton of debt. I did go out of state for grad school, so that was a little bit more money than I needed to pay, but I kind of still justify it because it has given me certain opportunities that I probably wouldn't have gotten in Ohio. But like, you know, it is just a consideration.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
yeah,
It's something
yeah,
that everyone needs to consider when they're looking
yeah.
at
And I don't think
additional
I was
education.
told that.
Right. Right.
Like
Well, yeah,
no one
that's,
talks about the
yeah.
realities.
Yeah, that's usually a fine print thing that
It is.
you find out later and realize, oh man, that was a lot of money. But uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So, Lydia, really interesting story. And as we wrap up, I'd love to know, what do you know about careers today that you maybe wish you had known when you were back in high school?
You know, you got to make the career work for you. I feel like one thing I realized is, does my career fit in with like the life I want to live, is something I kind of came to um, think about as I got further into grad school. Like, is this align with how I want to live? I think that you kind of make the best of what you got. And there's certain things I don't love about my job, but there's certain things I love about my job. And everyone's just, like I said, they find themselves in a certain position and they're making the best of what they have. And um, going from there, I feel so early in my career journey because I did just graduate with my master's last spring.
Hmm.
So this is the first real official, I've done a ton of internships and stuff, but first real official job. And I'm just kind of figuring it out and trying to make the most of it, and advocating for myself too, as far as like how much I think I should get paid and what I feel like I deserve. And I think that's a big part of making yourself happy in your career too, is just making sure you're sticking up for yourself and getting what you feel like you need.
Well, like you said, you're at the very beginning stages of your career journey, but I think
Hmm.
you've set yourself up to have a very successful career. And I love the way that you've combined speech language pathology with Spanish and your love of both of those. And I know Mrs. McIntosh is going to be very happy and very proud of what you've gone on and done. So, thank you very much for sharing your story. And I hope maybe some students will reach out to you and ask for some more information. But regardless, good luck as you continue your career journey.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
If you liked this Joust About Careers episode, you can explore previous episodes and highlights to learn about even more careers of Van Buren graduates. To be sure you don't miss upcoming episodes, please click subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform so you'll know when the next episode is released. Thank you for spending a portion of your day with us, and we hope you will continue to prepare for your future by learning just about careers.